Hello and welcome. You're watching UTV Live at 6.
Good evening. These are the stories making the headlines.
A man shot on Bloody Sunday tells the Soldier F trial he pretended to be dead.
Leaders at loggerheads as Belfast City Council is set to vote on a new Irish language policy.
This is something that should be celebrated. This is something that should be welcomed, and I look forward to the council making their final decision tonight.
So you clearly both are very divided on this?
Oh yeah, we've got very different views on this issue, of course.
Over 50 years fighting for justice. The family of a murdered councillor receives an apology from the Chief Constable.
Also tonight, we look back at when Northern Ireland went pink for the Giro d'Italia.
And from pedal bikes to super bikes, we speak to champion Jonathan Ray as he prepares to retire from the track.
And we have our first named storm of the season arriving on Friday. Storm Amy will bring very strong winds with the risk of coastal gales. I'll have all of the details later in the programme.
A man wounded on Bloody Sunday has told the Soldier F trial he pretended to be dead after he was shot. Joe Mahon also described seeing one of those who was killed on the day, Jim Ray, being shot twice as he lay on the ground. Mr Mahon is one of 5 men Soldier F denies attempting to murder.
The former paratrooper is also charged with murdering 2 of the 13 men killed when soldiers opened fire at a civil rights march in 1972. Our Northwest correspondent Gareth Wilkinson was in court.
Joe Mahon was shot but survived Bloody Sunday. He was 16. This footage of him being helped captured shortly after he was wounded. Today, 53 years later, he sat in court directly opposite Soldier F, the man accused of attempting to kill him. Mr Mahon described how a civil rights march in January 1972 started in a family atmosphere but descended into chaos and fear when rioting began and shots were heard. He was with a crowd of people taking shelter in Glenfada Park in Derry's Bogside. He said a paratrooper entered the courtyard followed by 3 or 4 others and opened fire, firing from his hip and firing from side to side. Mr Mahon was shot trying to run away. He found himself on the ground beside a man who said, "I'm hit, I'm hit." He later discovered it was Willie McKinney who would die from his wounds. Mr Mahon became visibly upset as he gave evidence and wiped away tears when he was asked to look at photographs from the scene. He described that while lying on the ground injured, a woman shouted, "Lie still, pretend to be dead," as a paratrooper approached. He said Jim Ray, who was lying near to him, moved and the soldier fired 2 shots into him. Mr Mahon said he later heard the same soldier say, "I've got another one." Soldier F denies killing Willie McKinney and Jim Ray, and this trial previously heard the only evidence that places him in Glenfada Park comes from 2 other paratroopers known as G and H. Joe Mahon also said he doesn't know which soldier shot him. Under cross-examination, he was asked if his version of events had become confused with the passage of time, but he replied with a definite no. Another of the wounded also gave evidence today. Joe Friel was shot shortly after a soldier opened fire in Glenfada Park. When asked about his account, Joe Friel says you don't forget when somebody is trying to murder you. He said he believes he owes his life to a young boy who shouted a warning. He said that made him turn and he was shot in the chest instead of the back. The trial will hear from another witness injured on Bloody Sunday when it resumes tomorrow. Gareth Wilkinson, UTV Live, Belfast Crown Court.
Belfast City Councillors will decide tonight if Irish language signs will be used more widely across the city, as well as on staff uniforms and on council transport vans.
The move has been welcomed by Sinn Féin, but criticised by the DUP. And today, speaking to UTV, it was clear it remains an issue that divides the First and Deputy First Ministers. Katie Andrews reports.
Irish language is becoming more visible across Belfast, but that growing presence is also fuelling political disagreement. There is an ongoing row over Irish language at Belfast Central Station, and now the latest debate is centred on a proposed policy change by Belfast City Council, which could see increased English-Irish bilingual signs on things like council-run buildings, uniforms and vehicles. This evening's vote has divided unionists and nationalists.
We don't have the cost for it. You know, we were told that we would have the costings for this before we made our decisions. We're now told that there's £1.9 million there that has been set aside for it, and that the rest will just be worked out through the rate setting process. But there's also concerns around staff safety.
Sinn Féin argue the policy would better reflect the people and culture of the city.
There's no legitimate reason to oppose other languages, there's no legitimate reason to oppose other cultures, and if it makes you feel uncomfortable, you need to have a look at yourself. I mean, that's the honest truth. You need to look at yourself if you're threatened by somebody else's language.
The First and Deputy First Ministers weighing in earlier and leaving no doubt about their differing views.
It shouldn't be foisted on other communities that do not feel that affinity to it, and I think there's a lot of serious concerns about Belfast City Council language policy. I think for many people, they want Belfast City Council to get on with their business of sorting out the major issues in the city centre, the dereliction, the lack of economic growth, to deliver for the ratepayers across Belfast on the issues that they're actually responsible for.
I think it'll be a very positive thing for the city. People who have an Irish identity are entitled to see their language around them. They're allowed to see it visible around their community. That can only be a healthy thing. This is something that should be celebrated. This is something that should be welcomed, and I look forward to the council making their final decision tonight.
So you clearly both are very divided on this?
Oh yeah, we've got very different views on this issue, of course.
Those differing views were also echoed on the streets of Belfast.
So you don't think it's a good thing to bring in more Irish language in Belfast?
No, we're part of the UK, love, and don't let me go there, okay? Because I'm not for the Irish language at all.
I don't want to impose it on people.
It's Councillor Gaelic, me. I speak Irish, so I would like to see a lot more of it.
Increased signage just increases the presence of it, encourages people to look into it and to learn about it.
Some people enjoy it, some won't, so it's up to each individual person.
I think it's a wise way of using the money, and it has been wasted on other things that maybe is not as wise.
While a decision on increased Irish language signage is due tonight, it may not be the final word, as the DUP looks set to use the council's call-in procedure to delay the outcome. Katie Andrews, UTV Live, Belfast.
A court has heard there is not a shred of evidence that former First Minister Peter Robinson received any money from the NAMA deal.
It's day 3 of the trial of 2 businessmen accused of fraud at Belfast Crown Court. Paul Riley has this report.
Frank Cushnahan, who's 83, denies 2 charges of fraud linked to a £1 billion property deal associated with NAMA, Ireland's bad bank set up after the 2008 economic crash. Today his trial heard Mr Cushnahan was appointed as an external member of the Northern Ireland Advisory Committee, which was set up by NAMA to advise in respect of the property debts in Northern Ireland. In his role, it's the Crown's case that he was under legal duty to disclose any conflict of interests that he had, which the prosecuting barrister said he failed to do. The prosecutor said that in November 2013, Mr Cushnahan was heavily involved with American investment firm PIMCO, which were potential purchasers of the Northern Ireland loan book. The prosecutor also spoke of a number of opportunities where Mr Cushnahan could have declared his involvement with PIMCO. Instead, the Crown says he failed to do this as he didn't want to scupper the huge fee he was in line to receive if the deal with PIMCO went through. During today's hearing, the jury was presented with information regarding a meeting between Mr Cushnahan and a property developer, which the latter secretly recorded in November 2013. In it, the prosecution said Mr Cushnahan mentioned Peter Robinson, the former DUP First Minister. Prosecuting barrister Jonathan Kinnear then stated there is not a shred of evidence Mr Robinson or anyone else received money from this deal. On trial with Mr Cushnahan is 54-year-old Ian George Coulter, a former managing director of Tuan Solicitors, seen here at an earlier hearing, who has been charged with 5 offences which he denies. The trial continues. Paul Riley, UTV Live.
The PSNI has issued an apology to the family of a County Tyrone councillor who was murdered more than 50 years ago.
The family of Patsy Kelly from Trillick said they welcomed police saying sorry for how parts of the initial investigation were handled. Stuart Robson reports.
Murdered more than half a century ago, Patsy Kelly was abducted and shot dead in 1974. A counsellor, a husband, a father to 5 children, a family whose lives were changed in an instant. 5 decades of determination have led them to this point.
Today's apology from John Boucher, the Chief Constable, is welcome in that it acknowledges the inadequacies in the police investigation and the added grief that was suffered by the Kelly family as a consequence of those omissions.
The 35-year-old's body was discovered way down in a County Fermanagh lake weeks later. Loyalist paramilitaries claimed responsibility at the time. However, a police ombudsman report 2 years ago found collusive behaviours and latent investigative bias in the initial police investigation. Now, the PSNI says that it recognises and accepts that aspects of the initial investigation by the RUC fell below expected standards.
51 years. Fighting the British legal system for 51 years. To get this apology today from the Chief Constable is massive.
Confirmation of a confidential settlement and the apology were read out in court. Mr Justice Rooney also expressed regret that Patsy Kelly's widow Teresa was too ill to attend. No one has ever been convicted over this murder. A small step forward today for a family still searching for more answers. Stuart Robson, UTV Live at Belfast High Court.
A candlelit vigil will be held tonight in memory of a couple and their son who were killed in a suspected triple murder in County Louth. Last night, 31-year-old Robert O'Connor of Drumgoyna in County Louth village appeared in court charged with murdering his mother Louise, father Mark and brother Evan at their home on Monday.
An expert who conducted a review of Northern Ireland's children's services has voiced concern over the rising numbers of children being placed in care.
Professor Ray Jones has said that over 2 years after he submitted his review, the number of those in care has continued to rise, growing by almost a quarter in 5 years. Tomorrow he will be at Stormont, where he'll be joined by campaign group Voices of Young People in Care. Well, he will warn of a growing crisis. Carol Jordan has this report.
It's a system which is designed to help families, but some tell UTV that their involvement with children's services has ripped their families apart. Tina, not her real name, had 3 of her children taken away a decade ago. Although she and her husband were cleared of any wrongdoing, she says she will never forget the experience.
The threshold, I think, for being involved in social work involvement and having it mentioned, never goes away. That is something that's flagged up permanently in your record, even though my children were returned and we were found not to have done anything wrong. That follows you around, and I think it'll follow me around till the day I die.
People will argue that social workers have a very difficult job. They're often parachuting into very difficult situations, and sometimes they have to make a decision which they feel at that point in time is in the best interest of the children. What would you say to that?
So I understand the pressure social workers have, but yet I actually think they cause much more trauma, splitting up a family and not acting in a timely manner.
Another parent, who we will call Jane, says 2 of her children were put into care in February this year after suspicions were raised about an episode of physical abuse. She says police have told her there is no case to answer.
My kids are eager to come home. They're constantly asking their social worker, constantly asking their grandparents, asking me for reasons why they can't come home, and I simply can't explain it. It's nothing more that I want than to have my kids home. Just have them beside me in normal life. This has been ripped from both me and my kids for going on nearly 8 months now, and it's not showing any sign that there's like a clear view of my kids coming home.
In 2023, Professor Ray Jones submitted a review into children's services in Northern Ireland, but he remains concerned that the system is still under pressure.
One concern is that children's social care tends to be a bit on the margins compared to the attention given to hospitals, etc. So it's not getting the attention, and the issues that need to be resolved are not being resolved. And the second issue about it is that we're doing things ×5 in Northern Ireland, so you don't get the consistency across what is still a relatively small region and smallish population.
UTV has seen a response to an FOI request, which shows that one health trust is sending children as far away as England or the Republic of Ireland due to a lack of availability of accommodation. Another father, who we'll call John, has been in the social care system both as a child and now as a parent. After a period of substance abuse, he lost custody to his children. Now he says he's clean and sober.
You've been in care, you've been in the system as a child yourself or an under 18, and now you're dealing with it as an adult and as a parent. Do you think the system has changed at all? Do you think it's
I think the system has failed me, and I wasn't being listened to. Now as an adult, I think I've been failed again by a system that's there to protect me, but it's ripping me apart, and it's just spiraled. It's just I think I've been failed twice, and it's so disheartening, because this is a system that's here to protect us, but it's not protecting me.
Professor Jones is keen to emphasise that there is a roadmap for dealing with the rising numbers of children in care.
What the politicians need to do about it, and especially the executive, who are the crucial decision makers in regard to this, is that they need to take on board the key recommendation of the review. Do it now. Don't let it drift further. Children and families aren't getting help that they require when they require it. You can tackle this.
Professor Jones ending that report. The Department of Health has told UTV that although the majority of 53 recommendations from Professor Jones' review have been accepted by the Health Minister, many cannot be implemented without further investment. It acknowledged the growing number of children in care and said that the trend needs to be reversed. It says it's working with the Department of Justice to form a Children and Families Arm's Length body. The full statement can be found on our website.
Now, a plan for a nighttime bus service has hit a bump in the road. Proposals were announced last month for a year-long pilot scheme, but transport unions say they won't be engaging in any negotiations over the scheme at this stage.
Well, Jordan Motes joins us live. Jordan, talk us through what's been happening here.
Yes, Paul, well, it's been the long-running criticism that you reach a certain point in the evening and there's a lack of public transport. The theory goes that if there are more buses and more trains later on into the evening, that would benefit Northern Ireland's economy. Now, there is a service like this that runs in the run-up to Christmas and is used by thousands of people every single year. Now, last month, a proposal was put on the table to run that service once again this year. But this time it was going to be slightly different, because off the back of that they would run an additional pilot scheme, and that would last for up to a year, costing around £650,000. But there is a bit of a snag here, because transport unions say they haven't been fully consulted and they're concerned that they haven't been able to negotiate a pay deal.
The night mover scheme, where there was talks at localised committees and works councils, it hasn't been raised formally at a consultative level, at a senior consultative level, as it should be. The company have gone on ahead and seem to think this is a done deal. We haven't had the nuts and bolts of it yet. There's obviously going to be safety concerns with late nights. We want to make sure that all those protocols are in place to protect the travelling public and our members. Also, with regards to the pay rise, we've submitted a claim in June. The company haven't even acknowledged it. With no pay talks set up. So obviously we want to have those up and running and concluded before we can get in and discuss the night movers.
Look, it's worth saying that the unions say that in principle they do support this scheme, but they have written to TransLink with their concerns. TransLink say they will continue to engage with those unions and say that they're still waiting on final details of the funding for this scheme. And even at that, it will take some time to recruit some additional drivers. Look, I think the plan had been for this to naturally run off the back of that summer scheme, or Christmas scheme rather. That's looking rather unlikely at this stage.
Jordan Motes, thank you very much. Now, time now to look at the headlines making tonight's ITV News at 6:30.
Here's Charlotte Hawkins.
Coming up, a company linked to Tory peer Michelle Mone is ordered to pay back £122 million for supplying faulty PPE during COVID. The son of former boxing champion Ricky Hatton says the family is heartbroken over the loss. We speak to the stars of the new film, The Smashing Machine. Join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
As ITV marks its 70th anniversary, we've been reliving some of the news stories which have become parts of our history.
Tonight, Jordan Moore looks back at the Giro d'Italia, one of the biggest races in cycling. It started in Belfast back in 2014. It only seems like yesterday. And its success laid the foundations for future major sporting events coming to our shores.
Welcome to the 2014 Giro d'Italia. With 6.1 kilometres to go, he's going into time trial mode.
In 2014, Northern Ireland welcomed the Giro d'Italia, one of the most prestigious races on the cycling calendar. From the north coast to Belfast, streets were lined with roughly 140,000 people as the world's best battled it out.
It's the race for the line.
Eamon, take us through what this was like when the Giro was on here.
Well, on the Friday it was a time trial. The riders came from behind us here, straight up the Omagh Road, and then done a right turn.
Eamon McConvey's cycle shop was feet away from the action.
Everything was a massive buzz. I mean, we found that all of a sudden people were getting more and more interested in the whole sport. People were starting to buy the Giro d'Italia jerseys. So it was just great. T-shirts, cycling jerseys, cycling hats, pink jerseys, anything to go. I remember my mum actually she had a pink wig.
He's riding behind Bohani, and Kittel comes to the fore, the big man!
We all went down and watched Marcel Kittel winning at the City Hall, which is an amazing picture. And you'll see in the shop the picture of the very finish of him winning with the hands in the air.
Watched in more than 175 countries, the Giro was at the time the largest sporting event held in Northern Ireland. For local media, that presented a challenge and an opportunity to fine-tune how to cover such spectacles.
And we are a go for day 2 of the Giro d'Italia, starting here in Belfast.
UTV was here. We're actually interviewing some of the customers we had sitting outside, catching really the person on the street's view of it. You know, local people living in the houses here, you know, people who hadn't cycled before.
Mark cycled for Ireland at the 1992 Olympics in Barcelona. His father Dave competed at Commonwealth Games level during the height of the Troubles. He says the Giro was a sign of a changing political landscape.
There were so many people came from Spain and Italy came here and enjoyed the hospitality, which they maybe couldn't have done 15 years earlier. And people seen then that Northern Ireland was coming back to normality.
The Giro's success showed Northern Ireland led the way in how to host a truly global sporting event, and it paved the way for more to come. Jordan Moore, UTV Live, Belfast.
Now, Jonathan Ray holds the record for the most World Superbike titles, with 6 championships won consecutively from 2015 to 2020. But having struggled to hit the same heights with his new team, Ray made the decision to retire at the end of this season.
He has 2 rounds left of the World Superbike Championship, which concludes in Jerez later this month. Ray has been speaking to our sports correspondent Ruth Gorman about knowing the time was right to walk away and what the future holds.
All good things must come to an end. For Jonathan Ray, it's almost that time, as far as World Superbike racing is concerned. It's been a month since the 6-time world champion broke the news of his retirement at the end of the season, and in a month's time, it will all be over.
Just what has life been like since you've made that big announcement?
Well, yeah, it's felt like a huge weight off my shoulders. It's been something that was in my mind for quite some time, to be honest. This sport's been incredibly kind to me, but also really tough, you know, and this, not more so than this year. I'm 38 years old. I've had a great career on bikes. It's certainly not Peter Pan, you know, as hard as I'm training and trying to, you know, find my peak again. Let's say them days are behind me. So I'm quite happy to decide on my terms when it's enough.
What sort of reaction have you had? Because you don't often get to hear so many compliments about your life while you're still alive. I heard you say this.
Yeah, I used that because someone told me that, you know, what incredible messages, unbelievable, the joy I was able to bring to people watching me, inspiration in difficult times. That's what meant a lot. But then also from peers in the paddock. When I got home, my dad was in the kitchen at home and he put his arms around me and said that, you know, he's just so proud of the decision, and that set me off. No, I was like, I hadn't shed one tear about the decision until then, and he said, you've done the right thing.
With 4 races still to go, Ray is as competitive as ever.
Even now, I don't think I'll realise the impact I've had in this sport until, you know, I've walked away. But I can walk away incredibly proud. You know, 6 world titles in a row, and 119 race victories. I still have races left. It'd be a incredible feat to try and stand in that podium one last time and have some really good feeling. But I'm enjoying this moment of retirement and also what the future holds. I've been quite uncertain what I'm going to do next, but I'm sure I'll still be involved in motorcycles in some way.
One thing he will be doing with his Saturdays is watching his sons Jake and Tyler play football.
I've had such a long, great career with highs, but that time is past, and I get so much fulfillment now in other aspects of life, none more so than watching the boys play football. My time's been, and I've enjoyed that, and now it's time to enjoy the fruits of the labour, the life it's provided me, and the opportunities that will now come as well from that, and I'm looking forward to what that holds.
Ray has already started the next chapter by inspiring the next generation of motorsport and engineering enthusiasts at Queen's University. Ruth Gorman, UTV Live.
And you can see a longer version of this piece over on ITVX. You can also catch special reports, mini documentaries and watch all our programmes, including UTV Live at 6 should you miss us. Just search UTV News.
Coming next, time for the weather.
Yes, Louise is here and apparently there's a storm on the way.
Yes, indeed. The first storm of the season, Storm Amy, arrives on Friday. We can expect some very strong winds and coastal gales along with some heavy rain. To understand the starting point of Amy, we need to look further afield, closer to America. We currently have two hurricanes there, Hurricane Imelda and Hurricane Umberto. They're swirling around each other at the minute, almost dancing, and it's called the Fujiwara effect. Now, Imelda stays put, but Hurricane Umberto starts to become subtropical, loses its intensity and starts to move across the Atlantic. It crosses the jet stream, undergoes rapid cyclogenesis, which is a deepening of that low pressure system, hence then turns into Storm Amy as it arrives with us. We can expect some very strong coastal gales, potentially causing disruption as it deepens and moves in with a yellow wind warning in place on Friday. At the minute, there's some uncertainty of the track, least likely, most likely and less likely. Most likely is that it will head off towards Scotland, but we can expect some very strong coastal gales across the northwest and the north coast, along with some very heavy rain as well. Plenty of rain tomorrow as well. Here's the forecast.
It's time to take a rain check. There's no place like home. UTV Weather. Sponsored by the Grande Rona R290 heat pump.
So we have a change on the way on Friday with the arrival of Storm Amy. We can expect some disruption with strengthening winds and coastal gales. Winds possibly gusting 50 to 60 miles per hour inland. There is a risk of 70 to 80 miles per hour along the coast. Along with that, we have quite a lot of heavy rain pushing through, so that could in turn lead to some disruption. Do stay up to date with the forecast over the next couple of days. We have some persistent rain pushing in tomorrow. Quite blustery winds as well, which could lead to some surface water on the roads with that rain clearing through. Then we have Amy pushing in from the Atlantic on Friday. We have quite a lot of rain with that as well, but those strengthening winds, you can see quite a few isobars on the chart there. Tonight, though, it's quite a cloudy end of the day. We have some spots of rain pushing through, one or two heavy bursts. Winds becoming quite blustery, coming from a southerly direction around the coast. This will hold temperatures up under all of that cloud cover. We'll have lows of around 14 or 15 degrees Celsius, so quite a mild night to come. A mild, muggy and cloudy start tomorrow morning, a few showers pushing through early on, but then we have a band of persistent heavy rain pushing in from the west during the morning tomorrow, pushing eastwards into the afternoon. Winds will strengthen. There's a risk of coastal gales as the rain clears through, and temperatures reaching highs of just 15 or 16 degrees Celsius. Not feeling too pleasant if you're heading out tomorrow. Across the rest of Ireland, it's a very similar story. Heavy, persistent bursts of rain, quite a lot of cloud, mist and murk along the coast, freshening, blustery winds and temperatures reaching highs around 17, possibly 18 degrees Celsius. As we look towards Friday, you can see Amy pushing through there. Quite a lot of heavy rain with that. Many isobars on the chart indicating those blustery, strong, strengthening winds. Quite an unsettled day to come on Friday. Stay up to date with the forecast. Bye-bye.
UTV Weather, sponsored by the Grande Rona R290 heat pump.
Well, that's your latest this Wednesday evening. Paul will be back with the late news at 10:30.
The ITV News continues now with Charlotte Hawkins, from Sarah, from me, and the rest of the Tea Time team on UTV Live. Good evening.
Goodbye.